I'm Leah Dickerman. I'm the organizer of the show Diego Rivera, Murals for the Museum of Modern Art, and I'm here with David Rockefeller and with Peter Johnson. MoMA's mounting an exhibition of the murals that Diego Rivera made for our 1931 retrospective, just 2 years after the museum's founding.
When the museum was founded by three very distinguished ladies, I was at Lincoln School and came home for lunch and was with them at lunch when they were having the talks.
Was your mother interested in modern art already before the founding of the museum?
Yes, she was, and she had already started collecting prints and drawings.
And do you think that her interest in Diego Rivera is related?
Certainly his name was brought to her attention at an early stage, and she liked what she saw of the work, and she bought one of his paintings called The Rivals.
Rivera was brought from Mexico City to the United States to create works for the exhibition, and he was brought 6 weeks in advance of the show on a steamship. And I've learned that your painting, The Rivals, was made on the steamship as he was chugging up the coast towards New York.
I'm interested to hear that. First time I'd ever heard it.
The money that she paid for that picture was the money that he used to fund his trip.
I think it's a very beautiful picture, and I enjoy it.
Frances Flynn Payne was one of the organizers of the Rivera exhibition at MoMA.
Frances Flynn Payne actually served as an agent for Mrs. Rockefeller. It became clear that Alfred Barr's interest and the interest of other people at MoMA in staging a show that would feature Diego Rivera sort of came together in a very felicitous way.
Yes, I think that's true. I mean, my sense of it is that within months of the museum's founding, the idea of doing a one-man show of Diego Rivera's work was on the table, and that was an extraordinary thing because not only were shows of living artists rare, but this was a 45-year-old Mexican at that. The centerpiece of the MoMA 1931 show were murals that Rivera prepared on site. And you have memories of Rivera at the time that he was working on the MoMA commission.
Oh, very well. I mean, he came to tea with my mother and also his wife at least once, maybe a few times. But she knew of him and admired his work.
Rivera made 5 panels in time for the opening of the exhibition in December 1931. And one of the things that's extraordinary about this commission is then he just kept on working. After the opening of the show, he made 3 more panels and he delivered them up to the galleries. Rockefeller Center is a major theme in these panels and appears in 2 of them. A large drawing called Pneumatic Drilling, which shows the excavation of Rockefeller Center, and then it's at the very center of a composition called Frozen Assets.
The scale of the Rockefeller Center project is hard to imagine now. Nothing had ever been done like this. Multiple buildings in the same plot that were integrated with one another.
When the plot was originally acquired, it was acquired for the Metropolitan Opera.
Absolutely.
And it was only because the opera couldn't afford to come that Father had to find an alternative, and Rockefeller Center turned out to be the alternative.
Yeah. The Depression, first the stock market crash and then the Depression, prevented that from happening. And David's father was left holding the bag, so to speak. He had to pay a rent of $3.3 million a year. He said, well, if I can't get others to build here, I'm going to have to do it myself. And it really gambled the Rockefeller fortune. The partnership that really saved Rockefeller Center was an agreement with General Electric, which owned the Radio Corporation of America, as well as a number of other things, that they would become a principal tenant of the center.
You can see that sense of technological fantasy almost in Rivera's designs for the Rockefeller Center Commission. He even imagines television in 1933, and there are these screens that are projecting in different directions. You can see Rivera's fascination with technology in another one of the MoMA panels called Electric Power, where he sets a power plant across the river from a skyline of a city, a metropolis that looks like New York City.
Throughout New York City, for a period of about 40 years, a number of these power plants had been constructed. And this would in turn provide some of the power sources that were necessary for the operation of Rockefeller Center. This was the kind of thing that Diego Rivera would have just been absolutely fascinated by.
One of the things that seems so distinctive about Rockefeller Center is that it had a public arts program that was integral to it from the very beginning. It seems in my reading that your mother and Nelson were great champions of having Rivera do something within the Rockefeller Center complex. But John D. Rockefeller Jr. and the architects also issued invitations to other artists.
The two artists who were quite famous at this time that they approached were Pablo Picasso and Henri Matisse. Matisse indicated that he was not that interested in doing it. The story is that the Picasso never actually replied.
The original commission was for a work, large scale, oil and canvas in grisaille. And Rivera persuaded the complex's developers to allow him to execute it in fresco and in color.
Shortly thereafter, he did a sketch of what he was proposing for the center, and that unfortunately what he painted was very different from the sketch.
The way the story is usually told is that the Rockefeller Center mural was chiseled off the wall because Rivera added an image of Lenin in 1931. It's the height of the cult of Stalin, and showing an image of Lenin alone is a big critique of Soviet orthodoxy and Communist Party orthodoxy. So Rivera's firing provocations in all directions.
I think you're right that but it was a point that very few people understood at the time. I think that particular story was lost to most of the people following the Rockefeller Center mural incident.
The picture of Lenin was on the right-hand side and on the left. A picture of father drinking martinis with a harlot and various other things that were unflattering to the family and clearly inappropriate to have as the center of Rockefeller Center.
In depicting your father holding an alcoholic drink, I wondered if that was a particularly pointed reference, because your family had been very involved in the fight for prohibition.
Well, it was particularly insulting and untrue because he never drank.
There are other things in that panel that are interesting as well. There are these swaths of microscopic organisms that go through the panel.
Diego Rivera loved to do a lot of research on the subjects that he would later paint in his frescoes. When he came to New York, not only was he shown different parts of Rockefeller Center being built and the trades involved in that process, but he was also taken on a tour of the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, which is now the Rockefeller University, where he would look through the microscopes and see little germs and things like that. He didn't paint anything that he actually hadn't studied. He didn't make it up. He actually had gone and looked at these things.
Even after the Rockefeller Center mural was taken down, your mother gave the Museum of Modern Art the funds to purchase Agrarian Leader Zapata. Why do you think she would have done that? She gave the money in 1940, so it was 7 years afterwards.
Well, I think she recognized that he was an important painter and that his place in the history of art was almost certain to remain, and therefore it was important for the museum to have those records.
Thank you both for your conversations over the course of organizing it. I've learned so much from both of you.
I enjoyed being with you, and I think it was an interesting program.